Hey, everybody, welcome to Cars with Cocktails, a show where Charles and I drink things and talk about things, mostly car things. And
Other things too.
yeah,
So we pulled a bit of an audible today. Let's just be honest. We were both fucking lazy and didn't feel like doing a bunch of work to figure out a drink. So I'm drinking gin and tonic with I'm calling them jingle balls, but they really look like I assume these look like the insides of your ball sack.
items you might find in your scrotum. What
Yeah.
are items you'll find in your scrotum for 500, Alex?
These jingle balls, but it is the holiday season, so jingle ball it is. This is a gin and tonic with a tiny bit of jingle balls. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm also drinking gin and club soda, which I still am unclear what the difference between tonic and club soda is. But I'm drinking the same thing.
It's a flavor. I can tell you actually what the difference is because I know, or I'm just making this up. Who knows? The world is a strange place. So tonic actually has extra ingredients beyond just being carbonated water, and to include sugar, citric acid, natural flavorings. That is the what's in your ball sack. And I think it's like an herb called quinine, Quinine. I don't know how to say that properly, but yeah. This fever tree, by the way, if you're a gin and tonic drinker, this is the best. The best. Totally a paradigm shifter. I've been thinking a lot of corporate speak the last few days for some reason. That's probably why I have such a bad headache today.
You're promoting
Synergy, and in an organic and holistic fashion.
Good.
Paradigm shifting.
Well, we're going to shift the paradigm right now to project cars and cut all this nonsense out.
Yeah. Who let him Randall? Randall?
Randall.
What am I trying to say?
I feel
Ramble.
like
That's the word.
God. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about project cars. Charles and I actually happen to be. This is a kind of a inside baseball thing. We're working on a project. He and I where we're going to try to put something together. And so we've been looking for some project cars, which kind of inspired this conversation. Yeah. So project cars, you've purchased quite a few of them.
I seem to about every 2 months get myself in this just twisted thing where I'm like, I need another project car because having 6 project cars is not enough for some idiotic reason. So this R32 really never really was like a project car. The black R32 over there, as you can see, the piles of nonsense back here was in fact a project car. But yeah, I get myself all like, I'm going to find a project car, and I spend months and months and months, and eventually I find something. So yeah, we are. I don't want to give too much away on the upcoming project but we have been working diligently. We had a car. I think it's safe to say we had a car. The dude was super weird, and unfortunately, it fell through, which is kind of like the standard, I think. For it's not going to be as bad as last week, but I feel a rant. I feel it, like I can feel it building a little bit. So I'm going to pass the ball to you so I can just let this really stew and simmer. And it won't be as good as last week, but we're
going to get that pressure cooker going.
Oh yeah.
So I think the thing that's most topical for most people in terms of project cars would probably be things to avoid when buying a project car. I think most people are in a circumstance where you and I will kind of just wing it as we go, right? When we go to buy a car that we think is a project, or even when you're looking at one online, we probably have a list of a million things that's going through our head constantly because some bullshit we've dealt in the past that we don't have to deal with again informs us to like, oh, watch out for that because this is going to get you. What would be your things that were red flags to make you walk away?
So if we get to the point where I'm actually there looking at the car, the biggest, hands down, deal breaking nonsense is fucking title problems. If you have a car with title problems, prepare to get yourself in a really bad, effed up situation because it could be fine. They could be honest and legit. But what I have found that most of the time, especially as cars get older, title shit is a disaster to try. Like, think about going to the DMV. Think about waiting at the DMV. Think about having all your little paperwork documents. And then you go wait 2 hours for the DMV to go, oh, you need to go back to the person you bought this from and get a check mark put right here. Title issues are a deal breaker for me. The next deal breaker is rust, mostly, depending on what we're looking at. But yeah, title issues.
Right. That's a good point. I probably wouldn't have brought that up. I've been very fortunate in my life. I've not dealt with major title issues, but they for sure can be a shit show, especially if something is wrong. And then even worse, the gentleman that we dealt with for that original vehicle was a little bit weird. If things with a really weird person go sideways with a title, now you're in a real bad spot because you can't get the person to do the thing you need them to do to get the title. So then you can't even register the car that you bought and blah, 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 whatever. So I think most interestingly, the cars I think people should avoid would be probably the cars that most people are likely to buy. And let me elaborate a little bit on that. Is a long time ago we made a video that was like how not to buy a Mark IV GTI. And the reason why I made this video was completely off the cuff. One of the guys who worked in our warehouse bought a Mark IV that he had just bought it and was having some kind of, I don't even remember why I even helped him with this car. So he had some kind of problem I was going to try to help him with. I look at the car, and the car is a nightmare, a legit nightmare. And the reason why he bought it was because it was low and plastic dip. It had wheels. It looked cool.
Is that a real build, low and plastic dip? I got a build, bro. Where's that SpongeBob meme?
Built, right, not bought.
Yeah. Hashtag.
So that, like, he bought that car because he fell in love with it. Like, yep. He saw it, thought it was cool. He kind of sold himself in the idea. The guy legitimately paid a shop to do chains on a VR. He did chains on the VR, so like they were new, and he had receipts for like a bunch of money. But like, and that's kind of the justification he used to say like this is a great car, and it's not completely wrong, except for everything around that was a complete fucking disaster. So even though the chains were done, the rest of it was shit.
To be fair to him, though, you start looking at modified cars, and when I first think of project car, to me, like, I want something stock. I don't want someone else's fucking rat's nest of disaster like that wiring shit on the black R32 that I had in here for a week or so, which finally got gone today. The more stock, I think, the better when it comes to a project car. But if you are buying a modified car, like, there's a huge advantage financially, assuming it's done well, to buying something pre-modified. You're never, like, when I'm done with this black R32, I'm going to be $20,000 into this car. It's probably going to be worth 15 when I sell it. So you're not going to be able to buy the turbo kit for what I'll probably end up selling this car for. So I get the appeal. I get that, yeah, it's, it had a bunch of maintenance on it. It already had some things that he was going to do anyway. I won't call those tasteful mods, but some mods that the car had. So he saved on not buying coilovers or air ride, whatever it was, and having someone put it on. He saved money by buying one that the chains had already been done on. But The problem with that is if you can't fix it yourself, or you don't have a strategy or a plan to like unfuck the fuckery of it, you're buying a huge unknown. You don't know if they did that right, or did they hack it up and just, send all the ugga and tighten all those bolts. Did it have an alignment done when they lowered it? So it's a huge unknown. If you're buying a project car and it's modified, you really like, if I'm buying stock, I'm like, oh yeah, cool, I'll look at it. If it's modified, bro, it's getting over with a fine tooth comb, getting gone over with a fine tooth comb.
I think you and I both know that if you buy a project car, if you or I buy a project car, right? If it's modified, I walk into that car assuming this shit's fucked up.
That's how you have to be. You can't assume they like. It's a rare bird that you find perfect. One that's done right. So when I sell this black car, it's going to be right.
Right.
I know it's going to be right. You know it's going to be right. But the average dude or the average chick that doesn't know who I am should come in thinking this guy hacked this shit together.
Right. And you and I both know that 9 times out of 10, when those cars are done right, you can just look at the car and know. Like, you don't even have to go very far. You can look at like 3 things. You're like, oh my God, they did everything perfectly on this because of one screw on this intake piece or like whatever. They, like something that you find too many small problems on a car that's hacked together. And there's so many inconsistent problems because there's so many things you can kind of just let slide that when the small things are let slid, a bunch of them, that leads to a mountain of them. And this car, the reason why I mentioned that video is because it blew up. It was probably the first video we had that like blew up. And the reason why it blew up was because when I was inspecting the car, I was looking over it, and the rear is a Mark IV, has A arm, I guess, style rear or front control arms, and so the rear bushing was worn, and so I had a pry bar in there, and I was prying on it to show how it would move, and the shock fell off the steering knuckle, and
that's awesome,
and almost killed me.
I almost died.
I literally almost died, and fortunately, the camera. This is back before we had a cameraman. And so the camera just rolling and caught me, it like scaring the shit out of me while I was doing it. Cause I was like, oh my God. Cause the whole wheel and, knuckle and everything came down.
Wow.
And so that's really what I think the video actually sucks because it was so not thought through at all because it was so off the cuff that I was just like, fine, if I'm going to help you on this, I'll make a video on it, whatever, blah, 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 this and that. He also happened to have aftermarket seats, which what we later found out to be the bottom stop signs that were cut up and welded to the floor to mount the seats, which was 100%. These shits, if you got in a car accident, 100% would have fucking ripped right off the floor.
I have one question. How much tints did it have?
It had so many tints. It had
all the tints.
It had so many tints.
All the tints. Yeah. that's so fucked up. Look, if as you go down your journey to buying a project car, and as I'm thinking this, maybe down the road, Paul and I, when we're together, we'll sit down and go through some actual like ads on Marketplace or Craigslist or something and show you guys what we look for when we are trying to buy a project car. Cause you can tell so much from good or bad from the ad that they post. Like if that shit says car for sale and that's it, don't come on. Like if they're not putting 5 minutes into writing a Facebook ad, it's going to be a shitbox, I promise you. Also, if it's pretty much any Mark IV, it's probably a shitbox.
That's currently true. Mark V also as well at this point. My favorite this is my favorite thing is, and I don't see this as much now when we're looking for like this project we're working on, but I see this a lot more when I'm looking for like cheap buys to fix for like either people I know to get them like a decent car for a good price or whatever. Is it'll always be like I'm looking for cars that I know are have jump timing, like shit that I know is fucked up. We can fix it for
I
a
know where
reasonable
you're
amount of
going with
money.
this.
They always say cars for sale. It's like whatever we'll call it, like a 2010 CC. It's a car that is worth, if it's in decent condition, running and driving, maybe it's worth like $5,000 to $6,000, probably roughly. Let's say, car will be for sale for $1,000, and it'll say check engine light, just needs a timing sensor or something like that.
Yeah, needs cam sensor, oxygen sensor, mass airflow, or the other one is the air conditioning doesn't work, but it just needs to be recharged.
Yeah, it just needs to be recharged. I would totally do it, but I just don't have time to fix this $150 repair that I'm giving you a $4,000 discount for this $150 repair, because I'm an extremely generous person and I don't need that $4,000 that much.
They're just trying to help the world out, man. They're trying to be good to society. Yeah, like, and I know it's probably a little unfair for me to say as I look at ads, because I look at a lot of ads. Before we bought the Toyota pickup truck that's going to be my wife's project, once the black car is kind of more in process, I probably looked at 2,000 ads. I probably emailed on 100, and I probably heard back on half of those. And I would say half of those that I heard back from, I know it's not sexy and exciting, but they had title issues. When I messaged this guy, I looked at the truck. I was like, yep, this is what I'm looking for. He's like, you want to drive it? I'm like, no, I'll just buy it. And that's what I did. And it's unfair of me because, like, I've seen so many ads and so many pictures. I can usually, I won't say always, almost always tell what that car is actually going to be like based on the pictures in the ad of the person. Right. Not necessarily in a good way either. Like, usually you can see there's an angle that they did or didn't take a picture from that the car's a total
yeah.
If there's 10 pictures
by omission,
none of them show this one corner. Exactly. None of them are the right side back corner. Yeah. The right side back corner is fucked up.
Fucked up. It is fucked. You best believe it. Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly, omission is the most telling sign in any car advertising pictures. Is like, if it's one of these idiots who posts like one picture and it's distorted with shitty light, and you're like, how did you think that this was going to sell anything? Okay, fine. That not them. We're talking about the people who have like 3 to 7 pictures and they all omit one particular place, and like, something. I see what you're doing there.
You failed, bro. We can tell. Sadly, someone will go and look at that car and not realize it's a giant piece of shit. Even with a project car, depending on how much money you're spending, I almost beg you, if you are not well versed in the car that you're looking at, go get it inspected. Even if it's a $2,000 car, that $100 might save you $5,000 on just not buying a shit box, or take someone that knows cars with you. Like,
so the interesting thing to me as we go through this process, and we can get a little more granular. I'll probably be a little vague here just for the sake of the content we're going forward. But we've had a specific car that I looked at, that I was semi interested in. The person is asking probably twice what the vehicle is worth. This car is completely torn to pieces, and they're asking a number that's way too high. I told them about it. I said, hey, here's the same version of that car that's already this thing's ripped to pieces and it comes with no engine or transmission or interior, and supposedly comes with most of the parts. You need to put it back together, but no engine trans. versus a car that comes with an engine and trans, fully running and driving in pretty good condition. And the one price of the car that was running and driving was not even double what the other person was asking for a car that's basically a rolling shell. And this person didn't want to come off that price. Now, what I think is most relevant about that is that people oftentimes when they're selling projects, especially when you get into older projects, is oftentimes they end up they were a project that they wanted to do and they've now surrendered. They were going to do it, they surrendered now, and now they're giving it up. But they're emotional and they think what they have is awesome.
Yep.
And what I think is super important, the number one thing to do is I don't give a shit. Do a search nationwide for that exact vehicle you're looking at to see what other vehicles exist in that range. I don't give a shit if it's $1,000 car, a $500 car, or a $20,000 car. See what exists in that range so you can get an idea of what you're buying. Because worst case scenario, you bought a car in California. As long as you can get the title, you could ship the car. It costs you $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever. $1,500 may be a hell of a lot cheaper than the cost to completely rebuild a car that's in barely, not even there, missing half the parts or whatever. I think the fact that somebody's capable of asking for probably double or sometimes even triple of what a car is actually worth, and sometimes it's based on being a dirtbag, but sometimes it's based on actually just being too emotional about it.
Sometimes it's based on I know what I have, no lowballers.
I know what I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking on that car, you're talking about the way overpriced car. So if you are going to go down that path, because I actually think there is a lot of value if you're going to be doing an engine swap or something like that. Personally for me, I would rather have a complete car. Even if the engine is, let's say, blown, I want it there because there's going to be value in the nuts and bolts and bits and brackets that are attached to that engine, right? I'd rather have it there. When you start to go down the path of a car without an engine and transmission or shit taken apart, it's not just that you got a really nice organized bag of screws taped to the headlight where you can just take screws out and put the headlight in and it'll be 5 minutes. It's almost never that way.
Right.
What it is you might get a bag of hardware. You get all the shit piled up in the trunk and in the seat and in the back seat. And you may have the hardware, you may not. And I really think people severely underestimate how fucking expensive hardware is. I mean, this little thing right here of what is it? ARP hardware. Yeah. This is probably $100 worth of hardware. Just that, if not more.
Yeah, just that little bubble pack. Yeah. He's not talking about all those boxes there. He's talking about just the one packaging is about $100.
This right here is probably $100 and $110. What is this? 12 bolts.
Yeah,
and now,
bolts.
granted, this is like race hardware and it's high-end stuff, but even factory shit is way, way, way expensive. So if you think you're going to buy this car that's completely disassembled and you just got to bolt the stuff back together, you need to take into account how expensive hardware is if you can even get the hardware. Now, if you're the type of person that's just I'll run up to the Ace Hardware and get universal shit, it hurts my heart a little bit, but whatever. That'll obviously save you some money. But even that shit, bro,
no, that hardware is expensive. That's expensive stuff. Hardware is not cheap, and especially when you're buying it with a lot of volume and variety, that can become a complete nightmare. Because this bolt needs to be this length, and that one needs to be that length, and just yeah. And you want your shit if you're to me, if you're spending all this time, energy, and money on a car, you want it to look decent too. And when you have all this like janky hardware all over it, like doesn't really look great. So yeah, I just feel like a lot of times people get into in over their head mostly by explaining away red flags because they are so enthralled with the idea of it.
Yeah, totally. And that's unfortunate. The other, I'm just thinking about that Jetta. His wife may be like forcing him to sell his project, so it's got it at a ridiculous amount of money.
Edit it out.
Hey, Charles, edit that part out. Let me start over. I was thinking about that guy that has that car for sale that I didn't just accidentally say, and you didn't just get a weird cut. His wife may be forcing him to sell it, or, maybe her husband is forcing her to sell it. And that's why it's a stupidly astronomical amount for a car that in running condition is the one you mentioned in running conditions. Actually a pretty decent deal. I think it's more than I would spend on that car, but I think it's in the ballpark of what normal would be.
I 100% think that car is worth it given how unique it is and how it's not super common. The value of that, and I don't think the car is like perfect at all. I don't think it's like a show quality car. But I think the car is a nice car for the value, whatever. And the only reason why that guy has anywhere of a shot to get what he's asking for that insane car is because the car is unique and not just another Me Too car that you can get anywhere. So, yeah, I don't know. We thought that was an interesting one, I think, as an example, because to me, I feel like you could take a car, doesn't matter what it is, put it into Marketplace, search the widest range you can. I think it's 500 miles is the widest range you can go. And then look at every single one of those cars. And then you can see the price of those cars and then compare it to another one. And especially when you get to older cars, that shit can get really far apart because you can go from a car that is like one of these very pristine, like super anal retentive, like original owner or like third owner of the car, and the car is now 30 years old, and the car looks almost I want to say showroom condition, but it's not really showroom condition, but it's like the best you could possibly expect a car of that age to look. And then you compare it to a car that's literally shredded to pieces with no front end, no engine in it. The seats are all out of it. The dash is half apart with fucking wiring hanging out the bottom. And it's like, compare these two, even if the other one is triple the price, it's probably worth paying the money.
We get so caught up in the like price in the ad that you lose track of how much time you're going to have to spend unfucking all of those things that are fucked up. And if there's $1,000 difference or a $2,000 difference or a $3,000 difference between a car that runs and drives and a car that does not, it's not that the engine is bad, it's not that the engine is taken apart or has a bad timing belt, it's not fucking there. You don't get it. You won't even have it for scrap weight. Almost every time it's going to be worth buying the running and driving car unless you have a plan for it, right? Again, I want the engine there even if I'm pulling it out and doing an engine swap. But if you don't need that, that's something to think about. If you're going in knowing I'm buying this rolling shell as a shell, I'm gutting everything out of it, I'm redoing all the wiring, I'm redoing the dash.
Maybe you're going to fab everything else. Who knows? If you have that skill set to fab everything as you go, awesome. Good on you. Like, I just feel like that person is so rare. And the fact that a project car can just cost another $500, another 500, another 500, another 500, and it'll another 500 you to 5,000
Yeah,
in
very quickly.
very
Very
fast.
quickly.
Right. And that's not even if you have like some super ambitious build like what you're doing, all your big turbo build, or even like something like an all-wheel drive swap, or something like a full restoration type thing, or whatever you want to do. It doesn't fucking matter, frankly. If you have anything that's ambitious, $5,000, that's that you can piss that away in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's one or two mouse clicks away. So what else do you like? So when you've identified a car. Let's play a scenario. This will be fun. A little role play here. You've identified a car on Marketplace or Craigslist, wherever, it doesn't matter. And you're like, okay, this seems reasonable. The guy has the title, which I can't say that enough. The guy's got the title. You don't see any like huge red flags when you're looking through the pictures and the ad, and maybe you're fortunate enough even to run the VIN through a Carfax service, which is not foolproof. It can still have problems that are not reported, but it's something I think worth spending $20 on. You go look at the car. Walk us through your process, Paul.
Okay, so first, what I would do, and now granted, probably you and I are a little spoiled because 100% of the time for me, cars that I'm going to look at, I already know what to expect in terms of common problems to look out for, because most of the cars I'm buying, I'm familiar with. I know what red flags to look out for. So what I would say is go into it, research to know beforehand what common problems to look out for that specific car. Now, again, the problem I think with this is that some people are going to be like, what common problems do I need to look for on this car? And that they think that they just put that in the Google machine and that's what's going to spit out. And oftentimes, yes, maybe someone like us, Charles or myself, whatever, has put out some content around that. Now, I would make sure you phrase it like something about common problems, X model or X engine or whatever. Make sure you're doing your due diligence. Then you can get an idea of what to look out for and what to expect, or maybe even by the model. Go into it with that information. That I think is probably a huge amount of the battle as it is. And then probably the next thing I would do is look at the car. I probably don't go over things, and I don't know how you are. I don't really go over cars with a fine-tooth comb when I buy them. I look at them. I get a general idea as to whether this is what I believed it was based on the pictures and how it was represented to me. And that is kind of how I make the decision as to whether I buy it or not. I make sure there's no major red flags of any kind. And then I pretty much, if it is what I expected it to be, I'm just going to buy it.
Yeah, I think for me, price point plays a lot into that too. So here's a perfect example. This blue R32, I paid, well, in my mind, I paid about $6,000 more than I should have, but it was like appropriately priced in the market at the time I bought it almost 3 years ago. The black R32, I got it a really good deal. I saw like 3 pictures of the car. I was like, yep, I'll take it. I'm sending a carrier to come get it. A car that I know I'm spending a top dollar for, I'm going through with a fine-tooth comb. I'm popping all the obvious stuff, right? I'm looking to make sure the tires are good and that the wheels aren't destroyed, even though the tires were not good and the wheels were destroyed on this car when I bought it. But none of these things I'm saying are like deal breakers. These are just things you really want to know before you cut that check or hand over that cash. I'm looking at a lot of body gapping to see if maybe a panel had been taken off and painted or a car had been hit and repaired. I'm looking for witness marks. Like, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, spend some time like Googling a better thing than Paul and I are describing. So a witness mark on a bolt is when the bolt has been turned. Fender bolts are really good about witness marks. If someone zips that fender bolt off to replace it, the paint around the bolt is not right. Once you see what it looks like, you'll be able to see it on like any car. It doesn't matter what kind of car, you'll be able to see witness marks. I'm looking, of course, at belts and hoses and oil leaks and coolant leaks. I'm looking up underneath to see if the bolts are there that it's supposed to have. I'm looking, of course, for rust. It's a big thing for me. I'm going through like pretty hardcore. I'm looking at weird shit too. Like, how worn is the steering wheel from where the guy or girl holds the steering wheel while they drive? How worn is the shifter? Is there a weird mark in the carpet where your foot rests, or is it fine? Is the seat bolsters on the side of the bottom of the seat collapsed? Like someone maybe bigger than I am has been driving it. How collapsed are they? That's the kind of just like random weird shit that there's probably like 10,000 other things that I look at.
So first of all, you saying all that made me realize, like, first of all, one thing, yes, for sure. I was thinking in the frame of mind of a cheaper car. If I'm paying top dollar,
even still, car, I'm still looking at all that shit, for the most part.
Yeah, I certainly will. Again, for me, I looked at a lot of all of that stuff in terms of the, I should say, like things like the wheels, the tires, whatever else. I kind of in my head know what I'm getting into when I get there. The other stuff is the stuff where I'm much less apt to do that. But I also know probably something that I'm taking for granted that I think you touched on, which is a really great point, is witness marks around bodywork. Understanding how to spot bodywork. I mean, I don't even know how to describe that. I feel like I'm at a loss to actually accurately be able to tell somebody how to look for a car that's been painted.
So here's how to do it. Here's how to do it. This. I don't know why I've never recommended this. Well, maybe because I don't know that they still do this anymore. So many years ago, I worked at CarMax. I sold cars at CarMax. This was a while ago. And during their sales process, one of the very first things that they would do with people is they would explain the difference between a car that CarMax, this is not an ad for CarMax. Like, if you hate CarMax, cool. I don't care. Just, we use resources where they are when they're available to us, right? One of the early things in their sales process was explaining to people the cars they don't sell on their lot. They couldn't have this type of paintwork. They couldn't have this kind of body damage. And in every showroom of every CarMax, they had a car that was wrecked. And the salesperson was supposed to go around and show you, see these marks? We don't sell cars like this. See this damage here? We don't sell cars like this. See, like there were mirrors on the floor, not in like a pervy upskirt way, but just so you could see under the car. This is what frame rail clamps leave for their marking when a frame has been straightened on a car. So if you're not sure, and there's a CarMax local to you, pop by there and see if they still have that. I really should know whether they do or not, but I haven't been in a CarMax in probably 15 years. But it was so good because they had them like, here's an arrow, this is what this looks like. And it was so cool because you could see one where you had no emotional attachment. You had no desire to buy the car because you couldn't. Like you mentioned earlier on the Mark IV, like we overlook shit because we want the car anyway, and that's okay, but sometimes we can carry that too far. But once you start to see what those things look like, and I'm sure there's like YouTube videos too, you can't not see them anymore. You see them every single time.
The hard part about a lot of that stuff is there's probably YouTube videos, and I'm sure there's some good creators who probably covered it. The problem, and you and I both know, is that there's a lot of things that a camera cannot catch that your eye can see. And maybe they made some sort of exaggerated version. And I know as somebody who makes content, like we've had to simulate noises before. Like, yeah, we had a suspension noise that Nathan like had to basically create because after we shot the video, it's a very prominent noise when you're driving the car, but on the video, it's like barely in existence. And so you have to fucking basically find a way to duplicate the noise that isn't organic. Yeah, I think that's really hard to do on a lot of things like bodywork, because a lot of this stuff is things like orange peel, which you could probably show on a camera what orange peel is, but not really show how to look at a car and recognize orange peel just by looking at it easily. You
Yeah,
know?
it's an easy thing if you're standing next to someone that knows how to spot it and the car has it and you go this right here.
Yeah.
See what I'm doing?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm looking at it like kind of like this or up to the top, down to
Right.
the bottom.
And you can see it's in this area right here, but if you see look out further, it's not, you won't see any of that around here. You know, like yes,
Yeah.
if I was in person, I could explain it to people. But I hate people, so I'm not going to do that.
The people give me the coronas.
No.
You can also though look for like really, and this really happens when you get into very inexpensive cars. Is there paint where there shouldn't be paint? Like, is there paint that's the color of the car on the windshield? Probably had some paint work done. Is the whole grill, like, is the car black and the grill black and the exhaust tips black? Like, part of the taillight, is that like, yeah, that clearly, like, it's a bit exaggerated, but I've seen all that shit. So
okay, literally, I saw this today while I was looking at cars. First of all, I wanted to make also a quick note. I don't hate people. I just made it. That was not serious a second ago. But I saw a car while I was searching. It had a fresh paint job. This car, and it was very.
It's a peach of a paint job.
It was a very bright color, so it was like very prominent. And this color, I didn't look at stuff in detail at first, and I was like oh whatever, you know, like thinking, looking at it, whatever. And then I realized they oversprayed it. First of all, they color changed the car, and they oversprayed it so bad they painted over the door panels on the inside of it. The inside edge of the door panel has overspray straight down it. I was like, oh my God, because the car was like brown underneath or something like that, and the color is very bright on top of it. So like at first I wasn't really paying attention, so I didn't see it, and I was like, holy shit, they painted over the door panel. They just sprayed it right over the top of the door panel. That's
wild. A really good example though that you can pick up on weird little shit like that from a picture in an ad that will send up that red flag going, nah, dude, not this car.
If
not
a car
that
yes, if they painted a car in a way that they have sprayed over top of an interior door panel, just to be clear, an interior door panel that should be maybe leather or suede or plastic or anything that isn't color matched to the outside of the car.
Wow.
Then that's a red flag that maybe some of the other work on this car could be suspect.
Yeah, that wouldn't be for me in any way, shape, or form. You know, I've bought a lot of really cheap cars. Some of them have been cars. So like the Mark III was a pretty cheap car that I bought. My first Volkswagen Cabrio was a pretty cheap car. I bought a black cabriolet when I had my VR6 swap cabriolet, and that was one where the car was a piece of shit. The guy had done a bunch of stuff trying to get it running. It turned out to be bad fuel, but I could never get the title for it because he bought it from a dude in Tennessee, and the rules for titles in Tennessee are different. But he's like, yeah, it's an open title. You can do whatever you want with it. And DMV's like, no, you have to get the original owner or the person on the title to notarize it. And like, this is a dude that the dude I bought it from bought the car. He bought it from. So like fat fucking chance of that happening. Luckily, I had the title because then I was able to strip it down and scrap it. So, like on that car, I paid like $300 for it. I don't care if shit's wrong with it. Like, whatever. The Miata that I bought for parts for my green one, kind of another same deal. Like, he wanted $800. I was like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. I'd like to buy this for $800. half the engine wasn't there, but I didn't care about that. Like, don't care about a bunch of shit on that one. What was the other? I had another title problem. It was the Miata, oddly enough, not the cheap one. Weirdly enough, the Miata that I bought, the dude I bought it from and the dude I gave it to after I stripped all the stuff I wanted, they had the same last name. It was super weird. And it wasn't like Smith or Jones. It was a kind of a unique name.
It's interesting. The entire time you were saying that, especially when you said about the dude and the dude and the dude, all I was thinking was that I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. That's all I'm thinking the whole time.
Is that from that movie that Robert Downey Jr. could never play that character again because he would be cancel cultured?
Yes.
Culture canceled.
That is a Tropic Thunder, and it's an excellent movie. If you haven't seen it, you should go out and see it now before they remove it from everything that it's ever going to be on ever again.
Too late. It's already canceled now. So this is how like fucked up title shit can be. I know I'm like beating that drum, but I like for real. If you plan on putting the car on the road and they don't have the title for it, find another one. See, here's the other thing we get so emotionally attached about, like this car we saw in an ad.
There's more cars.
There's another equally big pile of shit that you can buy to do your project on. Like, there's another shitty one too. So when I bought the Miata, it was a salvage title out of state. Cool. Not a big deal. So I thought. So I get it. I tow it home. I go to DMV. I'm like, hey, I got this car. I need a title for it. Oh, this was, by the way, like 2 weeks before everything shut down because of COVID. So I hit the jackpot on getting my timing in. So I go to DMV. I have all my stuff. She's like, okay, it's an out-of-state salvage title. You have to call this number and
get the car
they have to come and inspect it. I'm like, all right, cool. She's like, but I can get the paperwork going in the meantime. So I hand her my bill of sale. She's like, it says $0. I'm like, yeah, like I didn't pay anything for the car. She's like, well, you had to have paid something for the car. I'm like, okay. She's like, so you need a bill of sale that reflects the amount you paid. I'm like, but I did. Okay. Like, how much does that have to be? She's like, I don't know, $100. Just making shit up. So I'm like, fine. So I go and I get a new bill of sale after I pay the $100 to get the new bill of sale. And I call the number and they're like, oh, you need to call this other county. So I call this other county. He's like, no, you need to call this other people. Oh, by the way, they're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Okay, sounds like a cake job. So I call this guy. He doesn't answer. 2 weeks later, he calls me back. He's like, yeah, I'll be at your house in like 10 minutes to look at the car. I'm like, well, I'm not home. He's like, oh, okay. So my wife had to show him the car. I didn't have the paperwork ready. So then I had to drive like an hour and a half to go to the DMV. I spent 3 hours at the DMV while this guy tried to find like where this car had been salvaged because he said $100 was scrap value and there's no way that I only paid $100 for the car.
And the car, I didn't pay for it at all.
Bro, I drug this motherfucking car out of the junkyard. It was going to get scrapped. I didn't tell him that because I think he would have not given me a title for it. But that's how big of a fucking hassle titles can be, man.
Well, first of all, that's a salvage title. That's a whole different ballgame. And I know because I went through it as well with the All-Track.
Or Paul-Track, as they call it.
Paul-Track, some might say. But I went through that as well. So I don't know. It's probably county specific, but I had to get the vehicle inspected. And what I was told, what I went to was a county sheriff's office. No.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a deputy that did the enforcement branch.
And it was something like that too, where it's like, and I think this was 2 days a week between the hours of 9:30 and 11:12. And I was
Sounds about right.
I was like, so we're, just to be clear, we're talking about a 4-hour window in an entire week that I need to make sure I hit in. I'm not busy at all. Don't worry. I'll make sure I get there. Thanks. So yeah, it was a simple process when they did it. And essentially what I was told because I had a very lovely young lady who helped me from the sheriff's office who was there, and I'm sure they're county sheriffs, so that they could give a fuck about your stupid salvage title vehicle. They like they're actual law enforcement officers. They have no interest in dicking around with people who are putting together piles of shit that they bought.
He's like, you're doing what with this garbage? You're dumb.
You're stupid. I can't believe you would do this. But what she informed me of, that they are only looking to verify if it's not stolen. Like, I thought I brought you this vehicle that was supposed to be crashed where it's not a salvageable car, and then I put it back together and drove it there in a way that you were like, oh, now it's safe to drive. I'm going to certify it to go on the road, except for you haven't looked at anything at all. All you did was look at the VIN on the windshield and a VIN on the door to verify the car is not stolen. And then you sent my merry ass on his way.
Yeah, once you pay your homage to Caesar, then it's fine. Yeah, that's just a whole cluster fucking other mess. So, like, for real, title shit's no joke. I've walked away from so many cars that were good deals and nice cars, and cars that I would have been like, yeah, this is the way to go. But I can't find the title. It's in my brother's, cousin's, uncle's, next door neighbor's names. Yo, this shit ain't worth it. What else? What else do we look at project cars? Like, I'm trying to think.
I think the number one thing is avoid modded cars, and if they are modded, well, frankly, regardless, especially if you're going to be doing all this work yourself and your experience with cars, go inspect the car, whatever. If you are not experienced with working on cars, take it to somebody to get it looked at before you buy it, not after you buy it.
They call that a pre-purchase inspection.
It makes me sick because, obviously, because we have a shop, we get people who do that and they'll get a car inspected afterwards, which is smart. So you at least know what you're dealing with. But when we have like one of those fucking nightmare scenarios, it breaks your heart to hear a story about somebody who bought a car for like $6,000 and you look at it and you're like, this car I wouldn't have paid $1,000 for.
I have been on every side of that from a technician standpoint, where someone brings you a car and you're like, you know what? This car is awesome. It's a fair price. You should buy it. This is a good deal. To, if you're paying anywhere close to that dollar amount, you are stupid. There's better deals like 25 feet on the dealership car lot. Go buy one of those because you're going to get screwed less. And then the one that really does hurt is when they do buy it, they get it to you, you're just like, you got fucked.
I mean, not even, first of all, the problem is not even fucked. It's like, if you buy a car that you're in over your head, right? It's like, I actually, one of my buddies, after that S4 video we recently had with fixing the S4, the starter that almost, when the car almost caught on fire, the video, the job sucks fucking balls. It's not a fun job to do. You got to take one of the cats out, which is a motherfucker to get out on those things. There's only 3 nuts that hold the cat on. One of them is you need an act of God to actually remove it from the vehicle. The video is kind of funny because it sucks shit. And so a lot of it's me struggling. And he was like, you should make a series doing terrible jobs. And instead of calling it like, and instead of like Mike Rowe did dirty job, just do like a job called like shitty jobs. And doing like V10 TDI turbos and like W8 timing chains and just like anything you could imagine is like the worst thing you could ever do. Just come up with a list of those things. But those cars are the ones in my mind that's when you get yourself in way over your head is when it's like, it's like every dude you ever come in who thought like, it's always kind of the same customer. He's like super excited that he bought an Audi and he bought himself an A4, an A6, an A8, and it's a 12-year-old AL,
Ooh.
and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And he's like so proud that he did it, and and you're like, there's no way this person who's super happy to have been able to buy this car is going to be happy with the outcome, because the outcome is almost for sure not going to be good. And the number one thing I say, and I don't know if I've said it here, I've said it I say it every time I can goddamn say it, is $100,000 car gets cheaper to buy, but it doesn't get cheaper to fix. Ever.
Yep. I have echoed that sentiment very, 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 very frequently. And yeah, and the part I think that bothers me the most about that is that situation could have either been completely avoided. All you would have had to do was come see me beforehand. Or you could have still bought the car. Just because it's a pile of shit doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it. But now you have this whole list of stuff that you can go, hey, all this is wrong. I want to pay less money for it. So now you have a bargaining tool to get a better deal on, which to me is a no-brainer. Those hurt, man.
Yeah. It's certainly, obviously there's always a sentiment that like the shops screw people, tech screw people, but like most shops who are like good shops who aren't trying to get after people to try to screw them over, when they see stuff like that, they do not feel good about it. Like people might say some shit that lacks empathy sometimes, that in the moment sounds like they're being an asshole if you were to be a fly on the wall and hear them say it. But ultimately they feel bad for this person who's been completely fucked by this circumstance. And oftentimes it's preventable by, like you said, a pre-purchase inspection that you could pay $100 for, or
on the pre-purchase inspection. This is, to me, is the other key factor to that. Do not take this to a generic ass chain place and expect them to find the little nitpicky shit that's wrong with it. Find your technician or mechanic that you go to. If they work on everything, cool. Like I have some friends that they know a lot of shit about a lot of cars, and I would be 100% cool taking anything to them. But especially in the German car world, you need to take it to the dealer. Depending on the age, the newer, you're better off taking it to the dealer, or a specialty shop that deals in that line of car, right? If they specialize in Hondas, don't take your fucking Audi there to get a pre-purchase inspection. Nothing on those dudes. They probably do a great job with Hondas. A Honda is not a fucking Audi. I know you're surprised because you thought it was, but it's not. They have different problems. You need different scan tools to talk to all the modules. The specialty shop or the dealer know those cars really, really well. They know the thing that always breaks and sometimes breaks and mostly breaks. And they can say to you, this has been replaced because the part is not the right part number, or this hasn't been replaced. You're going to need to replace that. Please, please do not just take it to an average Joe shop unless you know that shop and trust that mechanic or technician working on it. Find the place that specializes in your line of car that you're going to buy.
Yeah, funny story about that. There's I guess before COVID, my hairstylist reached out to me and she said, "Hey, my husband, who's a real estate agent, just got a quote to fix his BMW that was expensive. And can you guys look at it and tell me like what's going on?" And obviously, we can work on a BMW, no big deal, but we're certainly not specialists and don't have all the in-depth knowledge. So, but what I found out was that the 7 Series, these things are fucking worthless. This is a car that's like a 2012 7 Series that you can literally go buy one right now with like 70,000 miles on it for like 12 grand. And This was a car that should be like, I mean, based on how much they were new, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 maybe, and you can buy them for like 12 grand. And the reason why you can buy them for 12 grand is because they had some sort of major valve stem seal issue that they burn oil like fucking crazy, and you have to rebuild the engine to do it. And BMW quoted him, there's some sort of like a class action deal, and BMW quoted him covering portion of it, but it was still going to be like $12,000 or something out of pocket or something like that. And it's like the car literally isn't worth $12,000. You couldn't sell it for 12 grand. So yeah, I was quite shocked when I looked into that, and I was like, holy shit. I couldn't believe it. And if you go like 2 years newer, the car is perfectly fine. The values like go up by 10 grand if it's 2 years newer. I don't remember all the details about it, but that was like roughly the idea. So anyway, that's the stuff that you can get yourself into as a consumer.
So I think the big thing is don't be emotional with it. There's plenty other piece of shit cars out there to buy. And yeah, do your research before you go look at it. Make sure the title's there. And
if it's a red flag, just accept it as a red flag. I would almost say be on the side of being a nervous Nelly, which I am not a nervous Nelly, but the best thing is to be on the side of erring towards that side to ensure you don't get yourself in a real bad trap.
Real bad trap music.
Real bad. That's an episode. We're done. Project Cars. Some shit's going to come soon, maybe, probably, hopefully. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.